would you say in response to people who say that we can't afford a united Ireland?
Well, I think the question really is, can we afford to sustain partition? We have a small island here of 6.5 million people with a lot of natural resources, but yet we have two taxation systems, we have the country divided, we have two health services, two education services, two currencies, and rather than trying to deal with the savings and the improvements to service that we could have from a proper look at the resources of the island and how we organise society on the island, we have two governments in the south. The government's pursuing austerity measures which will attack all of those services and reduce them, and in the north, Westminster's attempting to impose similar austerity policies on the executive in Belfast to try and attack services and affect those people who are worse off. So we're really approaching this debate from the wrong way around. We're trying to cut back on services on an island which are proven inefficient in terms of its organisation across the island, rather than trying to pool what we have, examine how to best use it, examine what resources are at our disposal, have a proper examination of what it takes and costs to run the north, what we receive from the British government, what we raise in terms of income and taxation in the north, and examine all of that and put it all in the one picture and see how we can organise society better on the island. Well, when you try and get behind the affordability issue, which is always the first argument against reunification or a proper examination of a new Ireland, you actually find then that the information which those who argue against affordability try to sustain their argument with isn't actually available. And the further you get into looking at those figures, the further you examine those figures, the more holes there are in them. And there has been an exercise in Scotland as part of the independence debate there to try and get behind the figures in terms of the revenue they raise in Scotland and what they receive from Whitehall essentially. And similarly in the north, we have been trying to get behind the figures to try and see what is actually raised in the north as opposed to what is received from London, and there are huge holes there. So if we are having a proper debate in relation to Irish reunification, a new model, a new economic model, a new social model on the island of Ireland, then we need accurate information, and it seems to me that those who try and deny us that accurate information are those who try to puncture the argument for Irish unity. What have they to be afraid of? If the argument for the union stacks up in terms of its economics and its financial support, then give us the figures and let us examine them properly. But I think what we need to do is look at the island of Ireland as a whole, cost, what it takes to run society for the benefit of the people of the island of Ireland, and what resources are available to it, and what the costs of trying to maintain a partition structure in the island of Ireland are at the moment, and let's do the sums in relation to that.
The example of Scotland is interesting. Is there space for that level of scrutiny within the north at this time?
Of course there has to be a level of scrutiny about the revenue that is lifted in the north as opposed to what is spent, and even the money that is scored against, if you like, the north, whether it's actually spent in the north or whether it's attributed as part of an overall cost that goes to sustaining Britain. And you know, I think if people wanted an honest debate in the union, then those are the sorts of figures they'd be wanting to see. But it seems that those who are most attached to the idea of the union want to sustain the myth that it is economically beneficial for the people of the 6 counties to be part of the union. If that is their genuine belief, then it shouldn't be a difficulty for them to stack up the figures. We have something like a 10.5 billion subvention, but to try and get behind that figure and see what is actually raised in the north, what is spent in the north, what is attributed to the north but spent elsewhere in Britain, those things all become suddenly very blurred. And I think that has been part of the myth of sustaining the union, not just with the north of Ireland but also with Wales and Scotland as well, to try and give the people who live in those areas an impression that they are being benefactors of a very generous system in London. And the more people actually get behind those figures, be it in the north of Ireland, but particularly in Scotland now where they have the resources to get through the Scottish Government to get behind those figures, they're finding that there are a lot of holes there. And I think we need, as people who want to advocate for Irish reunification, it's something that nearly all of the political parties in Ireland, apart from those who are unionist, aspire to Irish reunification. Then we need an honest debate on what that means in terms of society, but also on how it would be afforded, how it would be funded and sustained. And from Sinn Féin's perspective, we firmly believe that it can be afforded and sustained on the island of Ireland. And those who wish to deny that argument need to present figures to stack that up.